Hey there, myth enthusiasts and ocean lovers. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Greek mythology. We're going to explore the mysterious and sometimes terrifying creatures that called the seas and waters their home. These aren't your average fish or dolphins. We're talking about legendary beings that have captured imaginations for thousands of years. Greek myths are full of amazing stories, and the ones about water creatures are some of the coolest. Whether they're helpful spirits, dangerous monsters, or powerful gods, these beings play big roles in many famous tales. They've shaped how people thought about the sea and inspired countless stories, artworks, and even modern movies and books. In this video, we'll count down the top 10 oceanic and water creatures from Greek myths. Some might be familiar to you, while others might be new and surprising. By the end, you'll have a great overview of these important figures in Greek mythology. So, we're starting our countdown with number 10. 10. Cedo. Cedo isn't just any sea monster. She's actually a goddess. Her name comes from the Greek word Ichthyos, which means sea monster or huge fish. So right from her name, we know we're dealing with something big and powerful. In Greek myths, Cedo was known as the goddess of the dangers of the sea. Think about all the scary things sailors worried about. Huge waves, storms, maybe even sea monsters lurking in the deep. Cedo represented all of that. One interesting thing about Cedo is that even though she was seen as dangerous, she wasn't always portrayed as evil. Like the sea itself, she could be both terrifying and life-giving. This shows how the ancient Greeks viewed the ocean as something powerful that deserved respect, even if it was sometimes scary. 8. Hydra. Coming in at number 8 on our list is one of the most famous monsters in Greek mythology, the Hydra. This wasn't just any old water snake. The Hydra was a massive multi-headed beast that gave even the greatest heroes a run for their money. The Hydra lived in the swamps near a place called Lerna in Greece. It had a dog-like body, but instead of a normal head, it had many snake heads. Some stories say it had 9 heads, others say 50, and some even claim it had 100. But here's the really cool and scary part. If you cut off one of the Hydra's heads, 2 more would grow back in its place. Talk about a tough enemy to beat. 7. Ichthy Centaur. Swimming into the number 7 spot, we have the Ichthy Centaurs. Now this is a creature that really shows off how creative Greek mythology could be when it came to mixing different animals together. Let's break down the name first. Ichthyo means fish, and centaur, you might already know, that's the half-human, half-horse creature. But the Ichthy Centaur isn't just a fish centaur, it's actually a triple mix. Imagine a creature with the upper body of a human, the front legs of a horse, and the tail of a fish. 6. Triton. Surfing into the number 6 spot on our list is Triton, often known as the messenger of the sea. Triton is a pretty big deal in Greek mythology. He's actually the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Amphitrite, a sea goddess. Triton is usually described as a merman. That means he has the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish. But sometimes he's shown with 2 fish tails instead of 1. He often carries a big seashell trumpet called a conch, which he uses to control the waves. When he blows into it, he can either calm the sea or stir up a huge storm. One of Triton's coolest powers was his ability to change shape. He could turn into different sea creatures or even mist to help him on his missions. This shape-shifting ability made him a tricky and unpredictable character in myths. 5. Sirens. We're halfway through our list, and coming in at number 5 are the mysterious and dangerous sirens. Now, if you're thinking of mermaids with fish tails, think again. In Greek mythology, sirens were actually part woman and part bird. The sirens lived on a rocky island, surrounded by dangerous waters full of shipwrecks. Their most famous feature wasn't their looks, but their voices. The sirens had the most beautiful, enchanting singing voices you could imagine. But here's the catch. Their songs were deadly. When sailors would pass by the sirens' island, they would hear this amazing music. The songs were so beautiful and tempting that the sailors couldn't resist getting closer. They would steer their ships toward the island, only to crash on the rocks and drown. The sirens would then feast on the unlucky sailors. Pretty creepy, right? 4. Hippocampus. Galloping into the number 4 spot on our list is the hippocampus. Now this isn't some kind of water-loving hippo. The name actually means horse monster in Greek. And that's pretty much what a hippocampus is, a horse of the sea. Imagine a creature with the front half of a horse and the back half of a fish. The horse part is usually white, with a flowing mane, while the fish part is often scaly and colorful, with fins and a tail like a sea serpent. Some descriptions even give them webbed front hooves for better swimming. In Greek mythology, Hippocampy, that's the plural form, were the horses of the sea. They pulled Poseidon's chariot across the waves, kind of like how regular horses would pull a chariot on land. Can you imagine how cool that would look? A team of these majestic seahorses, charging through the ocean, pulling the god of the sea behind them. But Poseidon wasn't the only one who got to ride Hippocampy. Other sea gods and goddesses, like the Narids we'll talk about later, sometimes used them for transportation too. They were basically the underwater equivalent of a fancy sports car. If you were an important sea deity, you probably had a hippocampus or two. 3. Cheribdus. We're getting into the top 3 now, and at number 3 we have Cheribdus. This isn't just any sea monster. Cheribdus is one of the most famous and feared creatures in all of Greek mythology. Cheribdus wasn't a creature you could see swimming around. Instead, it was more like a living whirlpool or a giant mouth in the sea. The myths describe Cheribdus as a huge underwater cave or mouth that would suck in huge amounts of water 3 times a day, creating a massive, deadly whirlpool. Then it would spit all that water back out, causing huge, dangerous waves. Cheribdus is most famous for being part of a deadly duo with another sea monster called Sila, who we'll talk about next. These 2 monsters lived on opposite sides of a narrow strait of water. Sailors trying to pass through had to choose, get too close to Sila and lose some crew members, or get too close to Cheribdus and risk the whole ship being sucked down. 2. Sila. We're almost at the top of our list, and coming in at number 2 is Sila, the other half of that terrifying duo we mentioned earlier. If you thought Cheribdus was scary, wait until you hear about Sila. Sila was a sea monster that lived on one side of a narrow strait opposite Cheribdus. But while Cheribdus was like a giant whirlpool, Sila was a much more physical threat. And trust me, her appearance was the stuff of nightmares. Most descriptions of Sila say she had 6 long necks, each one ending in a head with 3 rows of sharp teeth. She also had 12 feet and could reach out to snatch sailors off passing ships. Some stories even gave her a waist ringed with the heads of barking dogs. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be to see coming out of the water? Like many monsters in Greek myths, Sila wasn't always a horrible creature. In some versions of her story, she started out as a beautiful nymph, but she was turned into a monster either by the jealous sea goddess Amphitrite because Poseidon liked Sila, or by the sorceress Circe, who was jealous because Sila was loved by Glaucus, a sea god. 1. Narids. And now, we've reached the top of our list. Coming in at number 1, we have the Narids. But wait, this isn't just one creature, it's a whole group. The Narids were sea nymphs, daughters of Nereus, an old sea god, and Doris, an Oceanid. Now you might be wondering why these sea nymphs are at the top of our list when we've talked about such scary and powerful monsters. Well, the Narids are special because they represent a different side of how the ancient Greeks saw the sea. They're not about danger or fear, but about beauty, help, and the kinder aspects of the ocean. In Greek myths, there were said to be 50 Narids, though sometimes you'll hear about 100 of them. Each one had her own name and personality. Some of the most famous Narids include Thetis, who was the mother of the great hero Achilles, Amphitrite, who became Poseidon's wife, and Galatea, who was loved by the Cyclops Polyphemus. The Narids were usually described as beautiful young women who could swim really fast and ride on dolphins or other sea creatures. They often helped sailors who were in trouble, calming storms or guiding ships to safety. This made them very popular with ancient Greek sailors, who would pray to them for safe journeys. But the Narids weren't just pretty faces. They played important roles in many myths. The Narids were also known for their singing and dancing. They would often be shown in art dancing, in rings on the ocean floor, or riding the waves. Some stories say they would come up onto beaches to dance in the moonlight. One of the coolest things about the Narids is how they show the Greek idea of the sea as a big family. Nereus, their father, was called the Old Man of the Sea and was known for his wisdom. The Narids, as his daughters, spread that wisdom and kindness throughout the ocean. The Narids remind us that the sea isn't just about monsters and danger. It's also about beauty, help, and magic. They represent the joy of a calm sea, the help that might come when you're in trouble on the water, and the mystery and wonder of the ocean. In later times, the idea of the Narids influenced how people thought about mermaids and other helpful sea spirits. Their legacy lives on in stories and art about kind ocean beings who help humans. So the next time you're at the beach and feel a nice cool breeze or see the sunlight sparkle on the waves just right, maybe think of the Narids. Who knows? Maybe they're still out there, dancing on the waves and helping sailors in need. These myths weren't just fun stories. They helped ancient sailors and coastal dwellers make sense of the unpredictable and often dangerous sea. They gave names and faces to the forces of nature, making them easier to understand and talk about. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep your feet dry and your imagination wet.